Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this session on AMP for Email. My name is Aakash Sahney. I'm a product manager on the Gmail team at Google. And I'm super excited to tell you about AMP for Email today, what it is, what you can build with AMP for Email, and how you can actually get started building your own AMP emails. So I want to start the session by talking a little bit about email itself. We all use email for a wide variety of our communication almost every single day. We use email to make plans with our friends, to check out promotions from businesses that we like to shop at. We use emails to get the latest updates from the social networks that we use, and to provide feedback on products or services that we've bought. So we use email for a ton of different reasons all the time. In fact, email is so popular that 1.5 billion people use Gmail every month. 1.5 billion users use Gmail every month. And last year, over 280 billion emails were sent every single day. So it's hard to overstate how critical email is to people. It keeps us connected to a bunch of the things that are important in our lives. With all that said, email has also been around for a really long time, a few decades at least. And over that time period, the web has evolved really significantly. We've gone from static articles and content on the web to dynamic interactive apps that support all kinds of complex interactions. As an example on the slide, no one thought that you'd be able to run a full spreadsheet application in your browser back in the early 2000s, but that's exactly what we can do today with Google Sheets. Over that same time period, though, email has stayed roughly the same. Yes, there have been lots of innovations in how we manage and process our email, but the contents of what you can actually send in a message have stayed pretty much the same over this period. Emails can include text, images, and links, nothing much more. Email content is still static, so it can get out of date, and users might be looking at stale information. And emails are not clickable or interactive like users have come to expect across the modern web. So to recap, email plays a central role in people's lives, in the lives of billions of people, and it's been around for decades. During that time period, the web has evolved dramatically, and yet email messages have been kind of left behind. The messages you can send still just contain text, links, and images, and it hasn't really kept up with our expectations from using the modern web. So all that is why last year we introduced AMP for Email. AMP for Email allows email senders to include all the richness and interactivity of AMP inside of their email messages, bringing email into the 21st century. Now, if you're not familiar with AMP, this is actually a pretty big deal. AMP for Email supports a bunch of totally new use cases inside of email that were never before possible. First, AMP for Email can make your emails more interactive with clickable interfaces inside of your messages. So users can browse and explore content right from within your message without having to leave their email. Second, AMP emails can also be kept up to date so that users are always seeing the freshest information when they open them, rather than stale, out-of-date information from whenever the email was sent. And third, users can actually take action right from your AMP email, like responding to a questionnaire or responding to an invitation without having to open up another tab. So we'll give you a few examples of what this all looks like in a second. AMP for Email is also compatible with all of your existing emails. It extends the email standard rather than replacing it. And with all of that together, AMP for Email unlocks a whole bunch of never-before-possible use cases in email that a few years ago none of us would have thought were possible. So let's walk through a super simple example of what can be built with AMP for Email. On the screen, you can see a sample email that asks Google I/O attendees for their feedback about their conference. Rather than have users open the email, click on a link, open up a new tab, fill out their feedback, and then return to their email, we wanted them to be able to take action right from the message. By lowering the friction to responding, we think we can get a higher response rate from the audience, giving us a better idea of how people found the conference. So right off the bat, you can see some things that are totally new. You can see that this message includes interactive elements like radio buttons so that attendees can take action right from the message, selecting between great, not bad, or meh to respond about how they felt about the conference. When the user selects a radio button, the UI can actually update to include a text field where the user can add some more details. And after the user's all done, they can hit the Send Feedback button, which is like a button inside of the message, which submits their response back to the I/O team. And this actually sends an inline HTTP request back to I/O, sending the user's response to the sender. Rather than having to open up a separate tab to fill out their feedback, users can take action right from the message. This leads to higher conversion, and instead of hiding behind a click, the action is right there inside of the email. So we'll actually go through and show you how we built this email step by step in a little bit. So even with this simple example, hopefully you can see how AMP for email unlocks some never-before-possible use cases inside of email. Now, as you might have heard, AMP for email is now available in Gmail. So email senders can include dynamic, up-to-date content powered by AMP in their messages today. When we launched about a month ago, we announced a number of very exciting email senders who had early access to AMP for email. And they've already started including AMP for email in some of their campaigns. They've built some awesome features for users, and they've also started to see some really impressive results. So we're going to walk through a few examples in a sec. So what we just saw was like a super simple example, but you can get really fancy with AMP for email. So take commenting in Google Docs as one example. Google Docs sends users an email notification whenever someone mentions them in a comment on a document. The problem with these emails is that they could quickly go out of date. So when new replies came in and you open your email, you would see a stale version of the comment thread. And so you'd have to open up a new tab, load the document in order to get the latest comment thread and to reply or resolve the comment. Now with the new AMP emails from Google Docs, when someone mentions you in a comment, you'll see an up-to-date comment chain in Gmail where you can easily reply in line like you see now, or resolve the comment, all from right within the message. So this saves the user a bunch of time because they don't have to open up the document, load it in a separate tab, find the comment, and reply. Pinterest, the popular social network for ideas, sends users email notifications about ideas that they might be interested in. And now before AMP for email, these messages were static and unactionable. When a user saw something that they liked, they'd have to open up Pinterest, choose a board that they wanted to save the item to, and then save it. Now with AMP for email, Pinterest users can just click, just like they do everywhere else on the web, to save new ideas that they're interested in. There's a company called Ecwid, which is an e-commerce platform for merchants, and it allows them to quickly set up e-commerce websites. Now, with AMP for email, Ecwid customers can send their users interactive catalogs to advertise the newest products or the latest items on sale. Users can click through products and view details and larger images for each one. All of this using AMP inside of the email. Indeed is a popular job search website that helps people find jobs that they're interested in. Previously, they would send emails to recommend newly posted jobs to users. The problem with those email alerts, though, is that depending on when the user opens the email, the job could no longer be available, or there could be a better job for Indeed to recommend. Indeed's new AMP-powered job alert emails fetch the latest recommended jobs and insert them into the message. So the user sees jobs that are more relevant, jobs that are still available, and jobs that are more personalized. With these emails, Indeed has actually observed 2 times the click-through rate on job alerts when compared to the old static emails. So a pretty massive improvement in the performance of their emails. Oyo is a travel booking site based in India. They send users travel recommendation emails for places that they're looking for accommodations in. And with Oyo's new AMP emails, you can see users can easily browse options, see larger photos about each accommodation, view details like whether there's free Wi-Fi or breakfast is included, all from within the message. So users can get a good understanding of what's being recommended from the message itself. Not only are these emails super cool and more useful for users, in a pilot that Oyo ran, they're also seeing massive improvements to CTR and conversion on these emails. So really showcasing what's possible when you add AMP into your messages. So hopefully a few of those examples gave you a flavor for what's possible with AMP for email. AMP emails can get super powerful, and the possibilities for them to improve the UX of your emails, as well as the value that your company gets from your email campaigns, are pretty much endless. And that's just a handful of the senders that have already started adopting AMP for email. Many more are coming soon, including Redbus, Freshworks, and Despegar. So it's early. We launched in Gmail, like I said, about a month ago. But we're really excited about the impact AMP emails are having, both on the use cases that users experience every day, as well as bringing measurable, real measurable value to the businesses that adopt it. So you might be thinking, like, hey, this sounds cool. I might want to integrate some of these AMP concepts into my own email campaigns for either for marketing or for notification emails that we send to our users. So we wanted to share a couple of design guidelines that we think could help inform how you think about going about building AMP emails. So the first is that it's really important to ensure that the dynamic aspects of your email serve a clear purpose for the user. They have to provide some value to the user in the form of making the message more actionable, or making the recommendations more relevant, or the information more accurate. Users open your emails for a reason, and any dynamic and interactive content that you add to your email should support that reason. Second, are the interactive elements clear in your design, and do users actually discover them? Make sure actionable components in the message are obvious to users interacting with your message. And remember, AMP for email is really new, so it's best to err on the side of over-communicating what these new components actually do in the email. Third, with these capabilities in emails, users are coming to expect navigation structures similar to what they do on the web. So ensure that any user navigation or actions are accompanied by the back buttons, the close buttons, the undo buttons that might be appropriate. Fourth, if you design AMP emails that allow users to take actions right from the message, you should ensure users are aware of the status of that action. It should be clear within the message whether the user action was successful, or if it failed, or if it needs to be retried. Fifth, ensure that you're using dynamic, interactive elements where they make sense in the message. You probably don't want to rebuild your entire website in an AMP email. So be thoughtful about the sorts of use cases that fit well into an email versus the ones that should require the user to exit to the application proper. And last, as with any user-facing surface, you should make sure to test your AMP emails to ensure it's accessible for users of screen readers and other accessibility features across desktop and mobile. So while we launched in Gmail about a month ago, we knew that when we created AMP for email, for it to actually modernize email the way that we wanted it to, we also had to engage the broader email ecosystem and ensure that AMP emails could be delivered and tested using the right tools. And there are actually a lot of pieces to this puzzle for email senders. Many senders use email delivery services to ensure that their emails reach users reliably. They use a service for testing their emails to ensure that they render properly across devices and across clients. And to have a lot of impact, AMP emails have to be viewable in as many email clients as possible to reach as many users as possible. So we're really excited to share that we've partnered with some of the most popular players in each of these areas. The email delivery services SparkPost, SendGrid, and AWS's Simple Email Service and Pinpoint Service all support AMP for email. So using any of those, you can actually deliver AMP emails to your users. Litmus, the very popular testing platform for emails, also supports testing AMP emails. And so I mentioned that we've launched in Gmail, but another email client, mail.ru, has also supported AMP for email in production, and Yahoo, Mail, and Outlook.com are coming soon. So they're both committed to launching AMP for email and will be over the course of the year. So with AMP for email, you can bring engaging experiences into your emails, shifting them from being static, flat messages to dynamic, interactive mini applications. Your emails can fetch up-to-date information and allow users to take action right from the message. AMP for email is compatible with a bunch of the tools that you already use for delivery and testing. And maybe most importantly, it's on track to be working with a bunch of the most popular email clients out there. So you might be wondering how to get started. It's super easy to get started with AMP for email. You can learn how to build your own AMP emails, how to test your AMP emails, and how you can register to send your AMP emails to Gmail users, all at the link on the screen, g.co/dev/AMP email. We'll put this back on the screen at the end of the presentation. Now, speaking of getting started, I'd like to invite a developer advocate from Google, Filip Stanis, on stage to walk us through the creation of a really simple AMP email.
Thank you, Aakash, and hello, everyone. My name is Filip Stanis, and I'm a developer advocate at Google working on AMP for email. Now, you already heard from Aakash what's so amazing about AMP for email. And I bet many of you are now wondering, how do I get started with this? How can I send one of these AMP emails myself and have it in my inbox? And look no further. That's why I'm here today. In fact, we're going to build the exact email that you've already seen in Aakash's slides that contains an I/O survey. And to do that, the very first step is to open the Gmail playground. The URL for that is amp.gmail.dev/playground. Of course, you don't need to know this by heart. It's all in our documentation. And the first thing you will see when you open the Gmail playground is a login page. The Gmail playground requires you to be logged into your Gmail account because it will be able to send an email to yourself, and you can't control the recipient. This is a developer tool, and it's not meant for production email sending. So what I'll do now is log into my test account, which will open the main page of the playground. Now, what you'll immediately notice here on the left is the source code of our email. On the right, you can see a live preview of the very same email. And the important thing here is the send button, which once again sends this email to yourself. Now, before I continue, I just want to explain how this works. Every AMP email has to have 3 parts: a text part, an HTML part, and an AMP part. The reason for having the HTML and text parts is so that email clients that do not support AMP can gracefully fall back, or email clients that do support AMP can allow their users to disable AMP and thus see the HTML part. So it's necessary for every email to have both HTML and AMP parts in them. Now, the playground takes care of this. It will add the HTML part to the email, and it will send the AMP part that you specify here to the user. And what you see here is, in fact, the minimal valid AMP email. And I will just quickly go through some of these elements and explain why they are needed. The first one is the HTML tag that contains the AMP for email attribute. This just tells Gmail or another email client that the format of this email is AMP for email. Next, in the head tag, we have the meta character set. For AMP and for AMP for email, it's required to use the UTF-8 character set. This is a good practice anyway, but in this case, it's just something that you have to have in your head tag. Now, here we have the AMP.js runtime. This is the JavaScript library that makes all the magic happen in AMP for email and in AMP on the web. It's the very same library. And I know many of you will wonder, does this mean that Gmail will now allow arbitrary JavaScript? And the answer is, of course not. The only JavaScript allowed are the AMP runtime and the various AMP components that are whitelisted for use in AMP for email. So we need to include this, but we can only use a limited set of JavaScripts that are hosted on the ampproject.org CDN. We also need the AMP for email boilerplate. And this is just one line of CSS that hides the body until the AMP.js runtime loads, which will show it to the user. This is to prevent content flashing. So again, this is just something that you need to have in your head tag. The most important part, of course, is the body. This is the thing that the user sees in their email. And this is exactly what we have on the right in our preview. And the body tag is what we will be modifying for the rest of this presentation. And speaking of which, the first thing I will do is just paste some HTML here. And this is just an image and some text that will be a starting point for our email. I will also add some CSS. AMP emails, like normal emails, allow CSS subject to the email client's rules. And here I'm just adding some CSS to make the margins and the text style nicer. Again, we will be focusing on HTML and not CSS for the rest of this presentation. So we just keep this in the head. Now, I think we're ready to send this simple email to ourselves. The first thing we can do is change the subject using the playground's subject field. Once we've done so, we just press the send button. And once again, this will send the email to the currently logged in user. We received a toast notification that confirms the email has been sent. And now the only thing needed is to open my Gmail account and see if the email has arrived. And there we have it. I'm going to click on this new email. And it seems that this is not exactly what we expected. In fact, in this case, the AMP email has reverted back to HTML. Now, as I explained, every AMP email has to have an HTML format, an HTML version. And this version is used for clients that do not support AMP, or in cases where the user has disabled AMP in their settings. But in this case, one of the requirements that Gmail has for rendering AMP is for senders to be registered with Gmail. You can learn more about how to register with Gmail from our documentation, or if you approach us in the AMP sandbox afterwards. But for now, what you should know is that registration is only required for production emails. So once your email is fully ready, that's the point where you need to register. For development purposes, luckily, we can just use Gmail's developer mode. And I will show you right now how to enable it. The first step is to go to Gmail settings. Once we've done so, the setting we're looking for is called dynamic email. And we first check that it's enabled, and it seems to be enabled, as the box is checked. But the actual setting that we need is called developer settings. And clicking on this box will open a pop-up window that allows us to whitelist a single email sender for development purposes. Once again, what we input here is the email address that we want to enable to send us AMP emails to this very inbox. So I'm whitelisting amp@gmail.dev to be able to send to myself, or my test account in this case. And amp@gmail.dev is just the sender email that the Gmail playground uses. If you have a different sending mechanism, then you can whitelist your own sender here and use that to test AMP. But in most cases, you will want to use the playground just for convenience sake. Once we've whitelisted this email address, we're going to press OK. And we're going to return to our inbox and see if that email renders. And we also will refresh the page just before we do that. There we go. And we can open that email again. As you can see here, the email now renders. And this is exactly what we've seen in the playground preview. Now, this email is not very exciting. It only has one image and text, and is admittedly something you could have done without AMP anyway. What gives this away as an AMP email is the lightning bolt in the top right corner. This lightning bolt means that this email is powered by AMP. So this is the first step, and now we know that we can indeed send AMP from the playground. And let's make this email a bit more exciting. So we go back to the playground. And what we are creating here, as you've seen on Aakash's slides, is a survey. And the best way to create a survey using AMP is to use AMP's AMP form component. Now, AMP form is a custom AMP component, so we need to add the JavaScript for this component to our head tag. And I will just paste it right here. Once again, this is something that's documented in the AMP documentation. You don't need to know it by heart, but you do need to know that in order to use the various AMP components, you need to add them to your head tag. This is so that their separate JavaScript runtime would load. Once we've added the form, we are ready to go back to our HTML. And the first thing I want to do is just add a horizontal separator, or the HR tag, to separate the content from our form. And once I've done so, I will add the form itself. If you're familiar with HTML, you will notice this is almost exactly the same. We have a post method. But what's different about this is the action XHR attribute. In normal HTML form, we'd use the action attribute, in which case the user would be redirected to the page where they are submitting the form. But in AMP, we use the action XHR attribute, which allows the HTTP request to happen in the background without any navigation. So the user can remain in this email message and submit the form. And the endpoint we will use is just a test endpoint that always returns HTTP 200. In a production environment, you would probably want to use a real server endpoint. Now, we can continue to build up this form. And the first thing we probably need is a question that we're going to ask the user. And in this case, we're going to add a paragraph and ask them what they think about the Google I/O conference. Once we have the question, we should probably provide a way for the user to answer it. And ideally, we will use a radio button. I think that's a really good choice for this particular use case. We also need to add a label. Without a label, we just get a little circle there, and that's not a very interesting radio button. Now we have added one of the choices. We'll continue to copy-paste it, since having just one choice in a survey is probably not going to be very interesting. And after pasting them, we, of course, need to also modify so that we do give the user other options other than great. We'll change the value and ID of each of these options. And once we've done so, I also want to make this radio button required. I only need to add the required attribute to one of them, and this will apply to all three of them. This is just to demonstrate how form validation works in AMP, and to also make sure the user has selected an option before they submit the form. Speaking of form submission, another thing we're probably going to need here is a submit button. Otherwise, the user can make a selection, but they would not be able to submit the form. So I will add a new input under this form, and this will, of course, be input type submit. The value is the text of the button, and I put send feedback there. And I will also add a reset button. It's, of course, not mandatory, but it's nice to have. Finally, this form is starting to look a bit cramped, so I'm going to add some margins using an existing CSS class I already have. And I think this is a good-looking form so far. And it's ready to test it. Press the send feedback button, and the form validation kicks in, asks me to select an option. And when I press the send feedback button again, seemingly nothing happened. In reality, what happened was that the HTTP request was made in the background, like I mentioned. And so the user cannot currently see this happening. However, AMP gives us a mechanism of letting the user know the form has been submitted successfully. And it has a very easy way of doing so. All we need to do is add a div and give it the submit success attribute. This div will be hidden by default, but it will be shown to the user after the form has been submitted successfully, so we can give them the success message and let them know that they have indeed submitted their feedback. And once we've done so, let's try this form again. Once I made my selection and press send feedback, the request has been made to the server, and upon success, the user sees, thank you for submitting feedback. I think this is now a good time to test this out in Gmail. We're going to change the subject once again so that we have a separate email thread. And we're going to press the big blue send button. We have the toast, so the email has been sent successfully, and I will now go back to my Gmail account. Everything seems to be rendering fine. This is exactly what we would expect from the playground. So let's try this email out once again. I will press the button before selecting anything just to see if validation works. Seems to be fine. Selected an option. And I received thank you for submitting feedback, which means that we've just made an HTTP request from the email itself. Now, I believe this is something that was not up until this point possible to do within email, at least not in this way. And if you think about it, this is already a really good user experience. Normally, we would have to have a link asking the user to go to our website to fill in a survey. And they would also potentially need to log in as well. In this case, they just have a form that they can fill in directly from their email without leaving their email client, press the button, and they're done. I believe this not only improves the user experience, but I believe this will greatly increase the number of users who would respond to this survey just because of the convenience of it. Now that we've done this, there is another thing we can add to this email. We can ask the user to provide us some extra feedback in form of text input. So let's go back to the playground. And what we will do here is add another section to this form. And in this section, we're going to add a text area element, which is a multi-line, which allows the user to input multi-line text, where they can give us some more information about the choice they've made. So we're adding the text area element. And we should also probably add a label. It's a good idea to have labels for all your form elements. Not required, but it makes the experience much nicer. So now we have a two-step form. And the next thing I will do is hide this section by adding the hidden attribute. And I will also give it an ID so that I can programmatically display this section when the user selects one of the radio buttons. Now, since we can't use JavaScript, AMP luckily gives us a mechanism of doing so directly by using the HTML markup. And this is quite easy and convenient to do. The only thing we need to do is use the on attribute, which allows us to specify an event, and then we can specify the action that happens. In this case, the event is change, and the action is step2.show, where step2 is the ID of our div. And I'm going to copy this to the other two radio buttons so that this happens no matter which one the user selects. Having done so, we no longer see the text area, but it should become visible when the user makes their selection. We're going to change the subject one final time. And once we've done so, we're ready to press the send button. And then we are going to proceed back to Gmail. Oops. So pressing the send button again. We have the toast notification, and we're ready to go back to Gmail. And here we have our third email. Looks exactly the same like in the playground. So let's test it out. So once we select an option, the text area will be displayed. And even if we change our mind about the option selected, it will still remain there. This allows the user to give us some more information about their choice in the survey by using text input. And once they've filled this in, they can press the Send Feedback button. And once the HTTP request has been completed successfully, we now have a message displayed to them. Thank you for submitting feedback. And that's it. We have our first AMP email here. And I think the best thing about all of this is that you can do this right now yourself. If you follow the same steps that I just made, you can have this email in your inbox in just a couple of minutes. So everything that you've just seen can be done immediately using the same tooling. In fact, we've made the source code of this email available publicly. So if you just head over to go.amp.dev/io email, you can see the full source code of this email, and then just repeat my steps, use the Gmail playground, and then send it to yourself. And with that in mind, I would now like to invite Isaac from SparkPost on stage, who will take this email further and show us how we could send it in a real production environment to many users using the SparkPost platform.
Hello, guys. How you guys doing? My name is Isaac Kim, a product manager at SparkPost. When talking about email volume, SparkPost is actually the #1 email delivery and data analytics platform, trusted to send 37% of all B2B and B2C email. We really love email. Email is the core of our business. It's in our blood, and it's what we focus on every single day. In fact, our mission at SparkPost is to help our customers thrive, learn, and connect with email. An easy way to remember this, TLC. We love our customers just as much as we love email. And in case you haven't caught on to what I'm trying to do here, we really love AMP for email too. We are so excited about the endless possibilities that AMP for email will provide for email senders. Now, if you've been playing with AMP for email and you've been experimenting, prototyping, and you're wondering at this point, how do I send this to thousands, even millions of customers? I'm here to show you how simple that really can be. Today, we're going to take Filip's AMP content, we're going to get it ready for production send, and we're going to send it to, let's say, 5,000 email addresses, fake email addresses. So let's get started. I'm in the SparkPost dashboard, and I'm going to go to templates. We're going to use a store template today, and I'm going to go ahead and create one. From here, I have a little bit of required fields I need to fill out. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and give this a template name. Let's call it AMP Email IO 2019 Survey. As I'm typing that in, the template ID will actually automatically be generated for you, which is really nice. If I scroll down, I'm going to go ahead and give this template a subject. This is the subject you'll see on the email. I'm going to call it Google I/O Survey. I'm going to use my whitelisted sending domain, product@sparkpost.com. I'm going to say the from name is from me. I'm going to give it a nice little reply to, and I'll give it a little description so I remember why I'm creating this template. From here, I'm going to turn on engagement tracking because how my email is performing is really, really important to me. Now, when I turn on clicks and opens, this is the HTML clicks and opens that you're already expecting to see today. This also actually enables the AMP-specific clicks and opens. So you can actually compare how your AMP email is doing against regular HTML. So really cool to see. Now, I've already copied Filip's AMP content, so I'm going to go and scroll back up and go ahead and just paste that in under the AMP HTML section. Everything looks pretty good here, and you guys have already seen how Filip's built this, so there's no need to do that again. Making sure for accessibility's sake, I want to go ahead and add in text so that that part is included when I send the email. And last but not least, to make sure that I have a fallback in case an email client doesn't support AMP as of right now, I want to include HTML. The slight difference between the HTML and the AMP part is going to be that I'm including a link to the survey instead of that specific call to action in the AMP content where I can dynamically answer that poll in the survey. With the HTML, it's going to force me to click on a link. Now that I have all three parts of my email, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And from here, let's go ahead and preview this email. So I have the HTML version with the survey link. I have my text. And now I can render my AMP content directly in the UI. So this is exactly what we saw, and I'm just verifying that everything is working. From here, before I get this out into actually start sending a real test message, there's one thing I really want to do, and that's add in a footer with an unsubscribe link. That's definitely a best practice to do when you send an email, and if I don't do that when I'm demoing today, the Spark Post deliverability team will probably come chase me down after this presentation, so let me be sure to add that in. We're going to go back to our template. And under the AMP section, I'm going to go ahead, for time's sake, just remove what I have here, re-add it with CSS styling. And let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I'm going to save this as a draft. And let me show you the preview. So I added in a little bit of styling with a border, some padding. I changed the little button to be more of a Google blue. And I added in the unsubscribe. So I'm going to make sure everything is working. So I'll put in a test, send feedback, and there's even a little emoji. Everything looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and send this to my test email account. And I'm going to click on Send Email. From here, you'll get a pop-up notification that tells you that the message has successfully been sent. And I'm going to go ahead and go over to my inbox and see if the message is there. From here, I'm going to go ahead and click on the email, and everything seems to be in working order. Everything looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and type in here too, just to make sure everything's fully functioning, and it looks great. So let's go ahead and now scale this up for production send. I'm going to use a pre-built recipient list of 5,000 fake email addresses, and I'm going to do that using a tool called Postman to make a REST API call. So I'm going to go ahead and save the template and publish it, and I'm going to grab the template ID. Yep, perfect. From here, I'm going to navigate on over to Postman. And under here, this is where I'm going to be able to link the recipient list, which has the 5,000 email addresses, the AMP Google I/O recipient list, along with the template ID we just created. I'm going to go ahead and just paste in the one I just copied just to double check my work, and I'm going to click on Send. At this point, the messages are being sent, all 5,000. And you'll see under the results, 5,000 total accepted. At this point, I can now navigate on over back to my test inbox, and you'll see the message is already there. You'll see the Thunderbolt icon indicating this is an actual AMP email. And you'll see this is the live production email that I've just sent to 5,000 people. I'm going to go ahead and verify one last time that everything just worked. And I'm going to click on Send Feedback. Very cool. So from here, the one quick thing I want to demonstrate is that we actually have the way to show you the data. So the clicks, the opens, when the messages are injected and delivered. So if we go into the event search under reports on the UI tab, you can quickly see a live stream of data. I'm going to look at my email address, and I'm going to check the last hour, and I'll see a live thread of all the events that have occurred for that specific messages. From here, you'll see the message history of the actual message sent, so injection, delivery, the opens, as well as a lot of other event data. And I don't want to get into it for time's sake, so I just wanted to show at a high level that this is all available to you, whether you log into the UI or if you want to have it pushed to you via our webhooks. We're really, really excited about AMP for email, and we're just getting started. We have a lot more coming as well. We've got a lot that we're cooking up in our kitchen, and there are a few things. So for AMP for email, in just the next 2 months, we'll be rolling out a full-screen code editor, as well as inline AMP validation that you've come to expect in the AMP playground. We'll be providing an improved templates management page, and later this year, what we're calling an advanced engagement tracking. More to come there, so stay tuned. Last but not least, enhanced recipient lists, an interactive list upload, as well as improved recipient lists management page. We're really, really excited about what's to come for email, and we hope you get started today. With that, I'm going to hand things over back to Aakash, who's going to wrap things up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. We hope you learned a bunch about AMP for email, what it is, what you can build with it, and how you can actually get started, like Filip showed, and how you can actually scale up to a massive mailing list, like Isaac showed. If you want to learn more, you can get started at the link on the screen, g.co/dev/AMP email. We'll also have a bunch of us in the sandbox if you want to ask us any questions afterwards. Thanks so much.